The seminar ended to prolonged applause. Richard Carlson stepped back behind the curtain, still holding a glass of water. He had just finished a nearly hour-and-a-half talk on living peacefully, how to let go of the small stuff in everyday life. Everything went smoothly. The audience seemed very pleased. They laughed at the right moments and grew quiet when he shared the story about his father. But when he glanced down at the audience one last time before leaving the stage, his eyes accidentally met a gaze. A woman, in her 40s, neatly and seriously dressed. Her eyes swept over him, quick, cold, and indifferent. No smile, no nod, just simply looking. Just a glance. But it instantly became a crack in Richard's calm emotions. Is she unhappy? Did something in my talk upset her? Did I do something wrong? He tried to push the thought aside, but his mind would not relent. That night, in his quiet hotel room, Richard lay awake. The more he thought, the more scenarios he created in his head. Maybe she was a harsh critic. Maybe she found the talk superficial, or worse, thought he was fake. One fleeting glance, one long, restless night. The next morning, waiting for coffee in the hotel lobby, Richard still couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. He recalled what he had said, whether his tone was sincere, whether he had been too long-winded, then blamed himself for not noticing everyone else's reactions. He realized the cruel irony. 100 positive gazes were not enough to soothe a single silent look. Then he heard a gentle voice behind him. "Excuse me, are you Dr. Richard Carlson?" He turned. It was the same woman. She smiled, a genuine smile, not cold as he had imagined. "I just wanted to thank you for your talk yesterday. I didn't dare stay until the end to speak because I was very moved." Richard frowned, not understanding. "When you told the story about your father, you looked down at the audience. In that moment, your eyes were exactly like my father's eyes. My late father. I couldn't hold back. It felt like you were looking at me through my father's eyes. That's why I looked away. Not because I didn't care, but because if I kept looking at you, I would have cried." Richard stood silent. His heart skipped a beat. Everything he had worried about all night, the stories he had made up in his head, vanished after just a few sincere words. That woman did not hate him. She was not judging him. In fact, she carried a very beautiful, yet deeply complex, emotion. His mind became empty, but in a gentle way. Not empty from fear, but because he realized he had just been awakened from a nightmare of doubt he had created himself. Back in his room, Richard took out his notebook and wrote, "I overanalyzed, something that didn't need analyzing. I let a glance, whose meaning I didn't understand, control my feelings and my sleep. I built a sad story and believed it was true. In reality, people don't think about us as much as we think, and sometimes the gaps in situations should be left empty rather than filled with fear." He smiled, no longer the smile of a successful speaker, but the smile of a man who had just understood the most important lesson he had ever taught others. Don't sweat the small stuff. There are things we don't need to fully understand. There are glances we don't need to interpret. And there are gaps that should be left alone, just as they are. We don't need to fill every uncertainty with doubt. We don't need to turn every vague feeling into a negative story. And we don't need to immediately understand the reasons behind every silence or expression of others. Because sometimes, what wears us out the most isn't the world, but the stories we tell ourselves and believe as truth. Learn to let things be as they are. No control, no judgment, no overanalysis. Because peace doesn't come from knowing all the answers, but from no longer being haunted by every question. The mind loves to tell stories, but those stories are not always the truth.